Hello, Compassion Ambassadors. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm so excited to have this opportunity to talk with one of the angels in my network of love, Marty Wuttke. I'm very blessed to have Marty as the guardian angel of my brain, basically. That's your title, Marty. Marty's also the founder of the Wuttke Institute in Santa Barbara, and he's healing brains all over the world with a remote program that he offers. He's also the co-founder and neurofeedback director at Jacob's Ladder, which is an amazing school for children who are dealing with neurological issues and developmental issues. And then he's also leading this incredible project in Santa Barbara, the Parole Recidivism project, that has 360 people participating in it right now, and I think has an incredible chance at changing the way that we rehabilitate parolees when they come out of prison, so that we can have a better upward-facing evolution of our, society. So the topic today is, what is a broken brain? So when I say that to you, Marty, like, what's a broken brain? What comes to mind?
A few things, but I think using a current example of what's happening right now in terms of influences, it makes a lot of sense. So, right now there's all this controversy about the kids at the border of the United States and Mexico, the children being taken away from their parents. And there was I think I mentioned this last time, there was a psychologist on CNN, neurodevelopmental specialist, who said, as soon as you remove a child from their parents, I don't care if it's 24 hours or 48 hours, that brain is broken forever. Mm. So and what that alludes to is this new understanding of ACEs, and ACEs is an acronym that stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. There's three categories of adverse childhood experiences that break the brain. They change brain architecture, quite literally. So the categories are being the victim of trauma, witnessing trauma, or being neglected. So those three categories are significant in terms of what they do to the brain neurodevelopmentally. And if we have any of those occur in our lives between the ages of 0 and 7 years old, the brain gets handicapped. And in the case of these poor kids, some of that, unless there's really strong intervention, is irreversible. But many of us, we have, and sometimes the problem is sometimes these traumas seem, innocuous. Oh, well, everybody had an alcoholic member of the family. Oh, everybody's had a divorce. Oh, everybody had a moment when they felt neglected, which is true. But if it's chronic, if it goes on for a long period of time, I mean, the worse it will get, obviously. But that's just one source of this broken brain phenomena. The other source, too, is environmental. And, there's no telling what's really happening from some of the exposures that we all are going through or have been through. The amount of lead still floating around the atmosphere in North America, something like 500,000 tons. And this is back from when we were using leaded fuels. So there's lots of things that are potentially messing with our brains and, inhibiting appropriate brain function. And then that's not to mention the various diseases that are running around now. Chronic fatigue syndrome, which is just now being recognized. Lyme's disease, which is still controversial in some places. There's all sorts of strange new things popping up, and what we're trying to find is cures rather than, well, where is this coming from? What have we done wrong that we're succumbing to these things? So when I don't know how many brains I've looked at over the past 35 years, but it's a lot. I've never quite added it up. And the prevalence of brains that are not functioning optimally, and of course I have people come to me who are coming to me because they're suffering. but it's quite large. I don't see too many optimally functioning brains. In other words, almost all of us could use a tune-up one way or the other. And then the understanding that if your brain's not really optimized, nothing else is going to be optimized. Nothing else is going to work right. You can't treat different facets of your health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, psychological health, without fixing the brain. All comes from the brain in the first place. The brain is, the brain is this processor. It's like your computer. If it's not working right, none of the programs are going to work right. It's simple. So I think that what you've seen and what other people are seeing happening now is that more and more people are starting to realize how important the brain is. I mean, for a long time, it's been all about the body, body, lose weight, do this, do that. But now we're understanding that the brain is really the most important organ in the body. If we don't take care of that, the rest of the body's not going to work right.
Oh yeah, I'm getting that training firsthand.
Yes.
First, I'm getting a front row seat so that, so that I can be part of, helping shine the light on this as someone who's had health challenges and mysterious illness I went through 20 years of looking for answers. And I've said it in our videos before, I was dumbfounded when I saw a map of my brain, and also dumbfounded by how simple it was to get a map of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And how I had been searching and searching and searching. I've been through countless medication failures. I've done every lifestyle hack. I mean, I just, I've gone for it. I really looked everywhere, and no one ever said anything to me about mapping the brain.
Mm.
And when you mapped my brain, we saw very clearly, the root, the foundation that needs to be addressed in order to work my way back to maybe to the first time ever to full-time health, to full health.
Mm-hmm.
I know my doctor, my Lyme literate doctor I'm seeing here in Mill Valley, Beth McDougall, she talks about a different type of health, which is exactly aligned with what you're talking about, where we really understand that the brain is our antenna. And when the antenna is broken, we cannot optimize our health. We cannot we don't have optimal access to our intelligence, our creativity, our productivity, all the things that we want to have. And I think lastly, the thing I want to say about that is in all this craze and confusion, it seems to be a mass confusion about this thing we're calling Lyme disease, which I'm kind of starting to believe it's more of a syndrome, that it represents a whole multiple layers of things that so many people are facing. Ultimately, I can't believe that so many people are going through treatment without having even looking at their brains. As you were able to show me the biotoxic overload on my brain, and Cindy Reynolds here at NeuroFit Marin is showing me the next layer of that. It's a real issue, and it causes something called low voltage. And it's in combination, for me, it's with trauma. And a lot of people who have this Lyme disease syndrome have also had developmental trauma, which is a very interesting thing, because here you just said that the brain can be broken from these adverse events in childhood. And I'm coming across people and hearing regularly that people who have this brain disease essentially have had adverse childhood events. There's some connection there. And I think that mapping the brain and treating the brain needs to be foundational in what we're doing when we're looking at Lyme disease or mysterious illness. Can you explain low voltage brain? What does that mean?
Well, in a certain, voltage is the power. How much electrical power is your brain able to produce? And it's an indicator of two things. One, how well your neurons working in these vast aggregates. I mean, you can't just talk about one neuron, you got trillions. So it's how well these aggregates of neurons are able to recover between this output of electrical voltage, the spark. Well, can your brain recover well enough to where it can keep putting out this much amplitude of electrical activity? But when it's low voltage, it means one, that recovery is probably off, and two, you're a little low in some neurotransmitters. particularly dopamine. Dopamine seems to be what is behind voltage in the brain. Frequency is dependent on other factors, where different parts of the brain being activated and so on are due to other factors, but dopamine is this driving force. And so when the voltage is low, it means you're running at a deficit. The brain is not producing enough dopamine, and you're, when I see it, usually what the person is complaining of is low energy. I mean, the low voltage actually equals low energy, burnout, and so on. So there's it's sort of an indicator for the energy in the whole system kind of going too far down. Can you bring voltage up? Yeah, it requires a lot of different interventions, but eventually you can get it up going again. So that's a critical factor, because it's for instance, in chronic alcoholism, you'll see low voltage EEGs, because you know what alcohol does to the brain. So you see this sort of reaction occur. All the neurotransmitters, not just dopamine, but all of them are really getting burnt out.
Right. And Cindy was explaining that, it's also the adverse childhood events, the type of trauma that I experienced in my childhood. And also biotoxic overload, essentially, which that's what happens with what we're calling Lyme disease. Basically, there's a bunch of pathogens, bacteria, viruses. We can get into the discussion about all the controversy about that. It doesn't matter. There's pathogens that are basically shedding repeatedly in cycles, flooding the brain with neurotoxins. And I don't know, am I overstating when it feels to me like when I hear that and I see that the brain map that my brain is becoming blue, I am in fear that my brain's essentially shutting down. Is that sort of what's happening there from the overload of the toxins?
Yeah, I mean, and that, that's part of your healing process, though, is to get rid of this. The same thing happens with black mold exposure.
Exactly.
The same sort of reactions. And yes, it's an overload of biotoxins, but I wouldn't say it's shutting down. It's just trying to accommodate, it's trying to compensate or accommodate for this flood of toxins in your system. Mm-hmm. Again, you see the same thing with black mold exposure. You see it with any kind of biotoxin, as actually. Even on certain, there's something called a fume event that occurs when you fly. And, I've never experienced it, but I know people who have. All of a sudden you smell this horrible smell, and what it is the fumes coming off of the hydraulics in the landing gear. And that's a neurotoxin to some people who don't have the appropriate liver enzymes for it. Mm. So even that you'll see the brain just start to not shut down, but go to that low power mode.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that can cause that: environmental exposure and the biotoxins and so on. So, obviously the key is, how do you reverse that, or how do you remedy that? And, you have to approach it from a lot of different angles.
Right. And one of the things that I'm hearing a lot from people on social media is, there are a few things. There's combo, the frog poison, I guess you call it, or medicine, frog medicine, as some people like to call it, and ice baths and celery juice. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, I do not feel comfortable putting one more neurotoxin into my body at this moment. I think that would be a very bad idea. Do you have any thoughts on combo for this sort of?
No, I mean, there is the quote, is it Paracelsus? I mean, what may be poison can also be the cure. Mm-hmm. I mean, homeopathy is based on some of that, but there is this remarkable adaptation response that the body will go through but it has to be done so conservatively and judiciously. It really takes somebody who knows what they're doing to do that sort of thing. So in relation to combo, I think there may be something to that, but you really got to do it right. You got to do it carefully. Mm-hmm. But for instance, in anti-aging medicine now, some of the latest research is showing that when you stress the body, give it a little, something that it doesn't quite like, it compensates by adapting stronger. That's why this hypoxic training, for athletes are doing for altitude and for greater performance, is also having applications for things like Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. Because when you stress the body like that, one of the first things it does is it starts to prune out the bad mitochondria. Because mitochondria going bad and sort of breaking down and replicating is what aging is. But if you can do this sort of natural chemotherapy and start pruning that mitochondria out so that the good ones are left and junk ones go, that's a powerful tool. And so this hypoxic, it's actually called intermittent hypoxic hyperoxic training. So what that means is you go hypoxic, low oxygen, hyperoxic, high oxygen, back and forth at intervals for like an hour is the general treatment. But there are 2 cases of reversing Alzheimer's so far out of Russia. Mm-hmm. So and it's a stressor. It's like a chemotherapy. So again, going back to something like combo, there may be something to these therapies if they're done right. They have to really be done right and give the body the chance to regenerate and rejuvenate itself once you've stressed it.
And to me, I feel like it's like in combination, it's like timing.
Yes.
It's how, what, and when.
When, exactly.
So it's always how, what, and when, no matter what you're doing. And I feel the concern that I have about, the responses I hear on social media is that there's not enough understanding. It's not grounded enough. And as you know, I mean, in the year that we worked together, it was like if I took the wrong probiotic, I was down in a crazy neurological episode, being grabbed by the back of my neck. And it was like all I did was take a probiotic that wasn't right.
Yeah.
And I felt so that I was brought so close to the edge of my life with that. And so for me, I know it's not the time to do something like that. I'm working with the PK protocol, the Patricia Keane protocol, where we're really doing neurocellular detox and repair. There may be a time that is appropriate, but like you said, I feel like it has to be very carefully monitored. And when you're dealing with anything that has to do with the brain and the nervous system, I mean, this is it. This is our, this is the path of the light, the spine. This is our electrical system. I'm just not okay with trying to do a DIY sort of approach. Do it yourself, DIY.
No, not a good idea. I think you're right. Detox is first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And detox and repair. So you have to strengthen. And then, like you said, even the hypoxic training, there's a pulsing.
Yeah.
I happen to me, from me, I'm looking at the perspective of Lyme disease and from the perspective of PTSD also. But I spoke with a nurse practitioner who works with Dr. Horowitz and some other famous Lyme doctors in New York City. And they're doing like pulsing with micro doses of antibiotics and naturopathics. And they're finding that they're having success with that. I know other people who are, I have a friend who's down in Mexico at a clinic where they're loading her all day long with, IVs and methylene blue and all these things, so much to the point of where her detox gets so much they have to actually manually pull her plasma out, clean the plasma, put the plasma back in. It's like there's all kinds of ways to treat this thing. And we haven't found any one way that's consistently right for everyone at this point.
No, I know. It's challenging.
It's challenging. But the thing that I feel like in closing that I really, I think our work together is to continue to educate people on the brain being the foundation of our health.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's amazing that you're offering members of my network of love a really special offer on getting their brain mapped. So you're giving a 50% savings on brain maps. That makes it totally reasonable for everyone to get a brain map. And you're even offering specials off of treatment. So I guess part of my mission is not only to educate people about Lyme disease, it's really to educate people about this relationship we have with our nervous system and our brain. And I had a thought the other day. I was like, God, my biggest fear is that if this disease, if you don't get a hold of this disease, you don't get a hold of this declining voltage in the brain, where are you going to end up? And I found in my contemplation, my deepest fear was ending up living on the street with a neurological disease, unable to work, and being labeled as crazy. And then I started to cry, and I thought, well, there's hundreds of thousands, millions of people that's their reality. And what breaks my heart the most is that their brain is broken.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like they're not even, you could throw pills at them all day long. It will never work.
No, no. I think we're on the verge, though, of really, understanding this. Like I said, we went through a couple of decades of body stuff, right? There's gyms everywhere now, hatha yoga classes everywhere now. But really, it's changing. Even corporate culture is changing that. The brain is all important. That has really become a focal point. Even here in Santa Barbara, we're working with corporations, not just bringing meditation in, but bringing, simpler types of brainwave biofeedback so that you're, instead of a break room, you have a brainwave biofeedback room that keeps everybody healthier and functional.
I love that.
We're right on that. We're right on that now.
Okay, so you can do that with your remote program. You can.
Well, we're looking at remote devices, portable devices that are fairly inexpensive.
Okay.
Looking at writing software for them that is in line with 35 years of my experience, and we're doing it now. We're beta testing it.
Amazing. And then you're already working with parolees, because that's another population of people who are dealing with severely broken brains.
Really?
It's like, how can we expect that they're going to be rehabbed if their brain is not rehabbed? It's not possible.
No, and we didn't even mention the other sources of broken brain, which are drug and alcohol use. And then obviously we finally are admitting now that concussion is bad. One is bad. And then when you get somebody who has it 4 or 5, then you really know we're in trouble. So that, didn't mention that, but those are the other obvious sources or causes of broken brain: drug and alcohol, and actual overt concussion.
Wow. And I'm actually involved with a study now at NeuroFit Marin, because I'm not living near you. So thankfully, I now have another brain guardian angel, Cindy Reynolds, and who and I just started yesterday with the Vasper.
Good.
Which is that machine that's like a recumbent bike, and you use compression cuffs and ice, and you do training cycles. I was on the lowest. They call it smooth sailing. I thought I was going to die. It's like so hard.
That's exactly what we're talking about, is producing an adaptation response. It's stressing you and then an adaptation response.
Right. In a controlled environment by someone who knows how to protect my brain.
Exactly.
I'm totally down for that. And then she's also doing primers and using the V light. So they put the laser light up your nose, actually, and them neurofield magnets on the head.
Yeah.
So I feel really blessed. I just want to thank you, for you're the one that's anchored this. It will be, I think, like the foundation of my health for my life. And I hope that by sharing, I can help, I can help this, more people get this.
Yeah, you're doing great work.
Thank you.
You're on a mission.
When it comes down to saving your life, it's like, it's that razor edge. You have to choose every day. And so I'm reaching for life with everything I've got, and really blessed to have people like you in my life who know how to actually get me there. And then we're going to be creating an offering with you in Encinitas soon. So if your friends in it are watching this in Encinitas, you're going to have a chance to work with Marty, and not only with getting brain maps and potentially doing some brain training, but you are a very, I don't know if the right word is accomplished, adept meditation practitioner. Mm-hmm. So you're an ordained Kriya priest. Is that correct? Minister. Okay. Do you want to, in closing, say something about that piece, about the relationship between our consciousness and the health of our brain?
Well, yeah. From a certain perspective, what you keep talking about, this electrical system in the body. The electrical system in our body is consciousness. That's why when the electrical system goes away, we are no longer in these or manifesting through these bodies. But consciousness is the life force, and that life force appears in the body as electrical activity. The whole universe is based on this notion. So, my perspective is that what we're doing when we're working with the brain is just the organ of the mind and the organ of consciousness. We are really directly working with a very esoteric principle here that you don't need to know, you just do it. When you're fixing the brain, helping the brain to function properly, you are opening those doorways or gates or whatever you want to call them, so that consciousness, this divine presence that we all are, can manifest more clearly through the body. So I look at this whole process as spiritual awakening, and not from any religious perspective, but purely from the perspective of that when we access healing, we are just accessing our own divine nature. And as long as we last in these bodies, we should try to keep them as functional as possible, because that's the whole point. So that's really all I've been doing for the past 35 years. I'm very clear that what this is all about is just getting individuals' inner healer to do the job. My job is to get whatever is blocking that out of the way.
Yeah.
That's all.
Thank you for explaining that, because that's the perfect explanation to what I'm continually saying, which is I fully understand that I'm in the process of an embodied awakening. Yep. And that this process of healing is a process of becoming whole. And as hard as it is, the many times I've sat in your office feeling like I just can't do this anymore, when we reconnect with that, I realize, oh, wait, okay, it is worth everything, because that is what I want more than anything.
Yep.
So cool. Well, thank you so much. And friends, if you are seeing this on Facebook, you can get more access to Marty and to what he's offering, and to higher awakening and healing through the Network of Love on patreon.com/Network of Love. And I can't wait to talk again soon. Thank you, Marty.
Okay, Heather. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.